Exotic plants from A to Z, from seed and leaf to reality. Lowland Nursery, we grow from here to there. Hard to find, just get easy. LowlandNursery.com.
Hi, I'm Joakim Coveney, and you're here at Lowland Nursery. Today, I'm going to go ahead and make one of my soil mixes for what I would consider my adult plant. So I'm going to go ahead and do my chunky cocoa core mix, and I'm going to show you how I do it. So come on, let's take a look. All right, so let's start down here. And what we're gonna do is we'll just go through each of these ingredients one at a time, and I'll tell you about it, I'll tell you why I'm using it, I'll tell you what it does in the mix, and we'll just go through each and every one of these. So this has actually been one of the best investments I've ever made. For like 215 bucks shipped on eBay, I bought this electric mixer. And this is what I put all my ingredients into, and this is how I blend them together. And what it does for me is it gives me a very even, consistent way of mixing all the ingredients together, and I can actually watch as they're mixing together, and I can just look in there and you know, I know what it needs just by look and feel. So this thing has become a really important component for me as far as putting big batches of soil mixed together, because otherwise in a 5-gallon bucket I'd be doing it all day long and my hands would just be torn up. So this thing's been a lifesaver. This is a mix of bark, of orchid bark. I use orchid bark, and charcoal. And the charcoal is in there to just kind of keep everything fresh, and the orchid bark is something that it's in every mix that I do. The highest grade orchid bark that I can find for drainage, and it works really well. Kind of lets the water fall right through, holds on to a little bit of it. If I want to use a mix that dries out real well, I'll add some extra bark to it. What we have next are the coconut chunks. So these are kind of what I refer to as coconut croutons. This is actually a very important component of the mix, and what it does is it, once again, kind of like the bark, serves a little bit the same type purpose. It allows the water to fall through, but each one of these pieces is actually very much like a sponge. The coconut fiber itself just really, it holds on to water. You can take any of these pieces and you can squeeze them, and you know, water will actually come out of them. This stuff is actually pretty dry, but even, you know, with it being dry, you can still squeeze water out of this stuff. So these are, best way to describe it is I use them as little sponges to hold on to moisture that then lets go of it fairly slowly. Once again, if I want a fast drying mix, I use I use a lot of this and a lot of the bark. Next, we've got actually one of the most important components of the mix. That is a finely chopped coconut pieces. Now, along with this finely chopped coconut, what's generated is this kind of fiber that comes out when it's chopped. This particular mix leaves that fiber in. Some of the mixes will go ahead and filter that out, but I prefer actually using a mix that has a lot of this fiber. The fiber actually creates a component of the mix. It holds everything together, it binds it together. As I add finer components to the mix, this fiber helps to keep those components in place. If I don't have enough fiber in the mix, then what happens is all of the finer stuff ends up washing out. What we have here is the basic component of the mix. Very finely chopped coconut pieces, and it's got everything in there. It's got the fiber, it's got the husk, it's everything, but it's all very, very finely ground pieces. This is a really important part of the mix for me because this is what I use to regulate moisture in the pot. It'll hold water almost like in a soggy type condition. A basic growing medium is 50% this and 50% just straight perlite, and that actually works as an inexpensive growing medium. But I'd like to add a lot more different components to my mix to go ahead and tailor it for some of the more specialized plants that I grow. More of this in the mix will mean that it sits wetter, less of it, and more of the chunky components would mean that it stays drier. Leica clay balls. These are an important component of the mix because they are essentially little porous rocks. So what these are small little kiln dried pieces of clay that essentially have a multi-purpose use for me in my mix. First of all, what it does is it creates kind of a structure in the mix that's, well, it's kind of like rocks, and that's good for the roots. The roots need something solid to actually cling to and hold on to, and when they grow against hard, rough things, they tend to toughen up a little bit. The other thing that these little clay balls do for the mix is that they're porous. So for a moment, they let water run through them and past it, and it creates drainage. But at the same time, because it's clay and because it has hollow, tiny little pockets all throughout, it actually works as a little microbial filter, and it holds on to water. Now we're going to take a look at the chunky perlite. This is the larger chunky perlite, and these are perlite pieces that are really quite large. This is used when I want a very airy mix or a mix that dries out quickly. The large chunks of perlite, while they hold on to water, it also lets go of it rather quickly. If I want to have a mix that dries out very quickly, I will go ahead and use a lot of this chunky perlite in it. And I can kind of create mixes that will dry completely every couple of days using this. When I'm creating a mix for my adult plants that go in 5-gallon or 7-gallon or just even 3-gallon buckets, I use a lot of this. Now, the last one was the chunky mix. So this is what's referred to as a coarse mix. The coarse is something that I tend to add to all of the mixes. Even with the larger adult plants, this tends to kind of fill a smaller void. If I really want the plants as an adult plant to dry out, I use a lot of the chunky and some of the coarse. But for my juvenile plants, this kind of provides the larger structure in the mix for them. This coarse perlite has the same job in the mix as the chunky. It's a scaled down version of the larger pieces. So because the pieces are smaller, this mix is going to dry slower. You can see the significant size difference between the full-size chunky pieces and this coarse mix. Which brings us to the fine perlite. And this is a really important component of all of my mixes because it kind of works as like the fiber does. It kind of holds some of the finer components in place and together. It provides structure in the mix for roots, creates a small little airy pocket that just kind of separates everything. It will allow things to dry out. These are really tiny pieces compared to the chunky, but they're even tiny compared to the coarse. So all three can work either together or, well, they all play an important component of the mix. So now that we've taken a look at all the different components and that we're familiar with them, we're going to go ahead and toss them all in the mixer and go ahead and make up some soil mix. We'll start with the bowl. These open. One of the things is that at this point I haven't really developed an exact recipe for this stuff, and I still do it very much by just how it looks and how it feels, and as I'm making it, I realize I need to add a little bit more of something or have less of something. I just kind of go by look and feel. So it's really just kind of a matter of coming up with what works for you. So using these components, I would encourage everyone to just take this information and apply it to your own stuff. Come up with your own mix. If you see something's drying too quickly, use more coconut base, or if it's sitting too wet, make a new mix and add more perlite, add more clay balls, add chunkier stuff. So what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for everybody. All right, and here we go. What I'm looking for is just for all these little pieces to be broken up and for a nice even mix, and all the pieces aren't broken up yet, and the mix is still not where I want it. So what we'll do is mix it up some more.
Turn it back on?
Mm-hmm. The heavier stuff, like this stuff, the larger pieces tend to land towards the front, they get catapulted into this lower pocket right here. So what I just kind of try to do is reach in there and I give it a little bit of a mix, and it also gives me an opportunity to run my hands through it and kind of figure out where I am with the mix. And we're pretty much there. This is gonna be more of an adult. So with it hand mixing that stuff, that would have taken 3 forevers, really. That cement mixer is definitely the way to go if you have to do any of this stuff in quantity. So here we have our chunky coconut mix, and this is our finished product that's ready to go and to get loaded into the pots for any of the bigger plants that I need to repot now. So that pretty much wraps up today. So thanks for watching. Please feel free to comment, subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll be back next time here at Lowland Nursery. Which brings us to blah.
Blah.